Yeah, dude, this is great. I don't do many podcasts. I think maybe I've done one. And if I'm your first guest, I don't know. Usually you start, I don't know where you go after that. So everything's up. So it's good.
A better life, better vision, what you wanting? Let's make it happen. Time to choose the better story. Come on. Choose the better story. Hey, choose the better story. Yeah.
All right, so welcome to another episode of Choose the Better Story podcast, a podcast about vision, mindset, performance, and purpose. And this is actually a podcast that's helping you rewrite the narrative for the future that you really, really want. And you get to be the hero of the story. I'm not going to say much more other than I'm super pumped to have with me this morning, Travis Osborne. Yeah. Oh my goodness. I told you last week that he was going to be the first guest on the show. I'm just going to give you a little rundown about his life. So he is married to his wife, Annette, of 29 years. They have 3 adult kids. And he has been in ministry for 30 years, which is incredible. And a couple years ago, he was demoted. He actually got demoted from being a youth pastor. And now you have to be the leader of a church.
I know. I have to work with adults. Everything after youth ministry is a demotion. And so we're hanging in there. Ryan and I go back. We were in college together at a prestigious
That's right.
college.
The university.
We both played sports for this prestigious university. And I think I wasn't your RA, but we were on the same floor. I remember that. So.
All I remember is I wasn't a huge volleyball person. Yeah. And I know you played volleyball.
I did,
and
yeah.
I actually went to go watch volleyball just to see, like, you could just crush the ball. That was so fun.
The funny thing, Ryan played basketball, but I was a bit more of a slender guy. But in volleyball, you can have a noodle arm. You can have a noodle arm, and it's actually not about bicep. It's just about snap. And so that was my lane right there.
Yes.
So it's good.
Yeah, I remember you crushing the ball. I don't know what the right term is. Is it a kill?
Crush. Yeah, a kill. Yeah.
It sounds really violent.
It is. I was a violent man. Came out of the streets of Norco. It's a horse town. So.
Well, I told you all last week that I wanted to have Travis on the show because he is the one that first told me the phrase, choose the better story.
Right.
And let's just kind of recount how this unfolded.
Yeah.
We were at Hume Lake.
Right.
I had a group of people there. You were the speaker for camp there, and walk us through it. There's a huge storm. What's going on?
I remember, crazy summer storm, kind of warm, but just downpour of rain. So we all, along with everybody else, we were huddling in the big, I think, was it the dining center area, but he's got these big glass windows, and we see these 4, 6, I don't know, teenage boys that they didn't run for the shelter, and they're out there in the lawn, I don't know, playing spike ball, volleyball.
Yeah, it was as if the storm wasn't even happening.
Yeah,
everyone else is running for shelter.
Yeah,
and they're just oblivious.
And they're out there, and I think everybody's just getting a kick out of watching these guys. And that's probably when I just said something off the cuff. I said, today those guys chose the better story. We're huddled inside here, but they're going to talk about that forever. And sometimes we let something like rain or difficult stuff maybe to huddle, but maybe that's when we go out and play. And,
exactly. Yeah, it was wild. I mean, it was raining so hard. I think it even hailed for a little bit, and people were literally running for shelter.
Yeah,
and it was they had no clue that a major storm was happening. I think it got so the water got so thick on the lawn, they started to slide on the lawn.
Yeah,
and I think that's when you said, "These guys are choosing the better story."
Yeah, and I think I called them out that night. I didn't know who they were, but even as I was teaching that night, because I think we all saw them. Who are these yahoos out there doing that? But I just said, but you guys did. They made that adventurous choice that I'm sure when they talk about camp, that's going to be one of their memories as well. And I guess in a bigger part of life, I mean, we have opportunities sometimes to choose safety, stay dry, but maybe the better story is actually out in the storm.
Sure. Yeah. So let's talk about that phrase a little bit, because my understanding is you had heard that before somewhere. Where does that come from?
Yeah, well, really, my wife had read a book. She's a great reader, and she had started coining that phrase a little bit before, so it became a part of our our life a little bit to choose the better story. And it came out of a book by Donald Miller. This book was A Million Miles in 1,000 Years. And he talked about his own life, and he wasn't really living a good story. And just some small tweaks and saying yes to certain things, not just adventure, but compassion towards others. He started meeting people that were doing things to help orphans or to build wells in Africa. He ended up later starting a mentoring project. But just it started with that aspect of him looking at his own life and saying, I don't know that I'm living a great story.
Interesting. Yeah. And so now that you've heard that, like, how has that practically played out for you in your life, maybe your family or in ministry?
Yeah. With giving that thought each and every day, we really are choosing our own story each day. We can't choose the circumstances that come, but there's opportunities that we can say yes to, small ones or big ones. And with a bit of thought, because sometimes I tend to go for safety or comfort. But the better story isn't always or ever going to be found in huddling or cocooning away. Sometimes there's interaction with people that might be difficult or an opportunity. And so just asking, well, what would be the better story in my life today? I even think, what is God inviting me into today? And at the end of the year or the end of my life, when I look back, would I be glad that what would I say would have been the better choice that day?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's funny because sometimes the smallest things can make a dramatic impact on our life. And when you said that at Hume during that storm, my wife and I talked about that. And we actually, because I was in ministry at the time, we actually created an entire year's theme around that idea of choose the better story. And to me, of all my years in ministry, 21 years in ministry, I think that theme was my favorite just because it's so, I don't know, it's so enticing.
Yeah.
So enticing. But like personally for me, like, we lost our home in the campfire in 2018 and our family, like, I don't know, and there's still people that are really, really wrestling with all the loss.
Right.
And I'm not saying it's because of that phrase, but it was an opportunity. Again, we couldn't control that circumstance, but it was an opportunity for us to kind of navigate that season and choose the better story. Yeah. I mean, I remember so many times people were so empathetic, and our response was we would say something funny. We would find ourselves laughing. We would say jokes, just because for us choosing the better story was laughing about it. What are we going to do? Cry? We could cry about it. Yeah. We could whine about it. But there's so many things. I can remember, times the last several years where, after a tough week, you just want to rest.
Yeah.
And one of the kids will say, "Hey, let's go do something." And I'll be like, "Yeah, I'm tired." And then they'll say something like, "What would be the better story?"
I know. Now it's a guilt. Yeah, there's a big weight. Well,
yes, it can be used to be guilty.
And sometimes the better story is I need to take a nap, sometimes, but hardly ever. But I like what you're talking about, though. There's despair, and we can play the victim because we have had circumstances. Mm-hmm. But even it's a posture, a mindset posture too, to say, you know what, though, it's an adventure. We used to take students on mission trips, and inflexibility was one of the biggest things we combated was when situations would change, but we needed to be flexible. And so we kind of coined this, I guess, mantra every day. Hey, today, this is an adventure. I can't predict everything. I can't control everything. So more than anything, I'll be willing to jump in and do whatever the situation demands. And I'll do it with a positive and flexible attitude, and to God be the glory. And I remember, so every day we would kind of chant that, you can't control it, can't predict it, but let's do whatever the situation demands.
I love it. So. That's great. Yeah. So you have, 30 years in ministry.
I should say 29 plus 1. I took a year of sabbatical and I worked as a barista at a coffee shop. I won't name it, but let's just call it St. Arbuck's. Okay. It was a holy place. Wore a green apron. And after 12 years of ministry, dude, it was awesome. Just to serve people coffee.
Before we get into like more specifics about Choose a Better Story, you have to have an embarrassing story.
Yeah.
I feel like you probably should spill the beans on. Is there anything that comes to mind with like an embarrassing story?
You got to laugh at yourself. A few things happened with like medical appointments for me, but I remember when we did go to that college, Simpson was the prestigious university, I went to like a private school. I had never had to have a physical. But when I went to college and played sports, I had to have a physical, and I'd never dropped my shorts for a doctor. But I knew it was coming. I'm going to play it cool. I'm a junior in college. What am I, like 20? And so I'm like, okay, what's going to happen? Well, then the doctor puts on a rubber glove and kind of emphasizes the first finger. And I'm like, I'm not going to freak out. And he says, I need you to drop your shorts. So I thought it was going to be what would be more a proctology, something around the back. So I take my shorts down and I just put my rear end toward him. And he didn't say anything. And he, with the rubber glove, did the reach around and asked me to cough. And I thought, and then I couldn't move. And I thought, he must think I'm really shy. And so I went back and told my teammates about it. I had my first physical.
And did they laugh at you?
They did. Yeah. Okay. What an idiot. And then they said, what kind of school did you go to that you've never had to have, to turn your head and cough the first time? Sounds good.
That is good.
Yeah. Everything was okay. I want you to know. Luckily, nothing came out bad. So,
all right.
Yeah,
so if there's anything you want to remember about Travis, just remember that.
Very shy.
I love that. Yeah. All right, we're gonna dive in. So in the first episode, I talked a lot about you're the hero of your own story, and as I've been wrestling with this idea, being in ministry, being a person of faith, I've really wrestled with what are the people of faith going to think when they hear the concept of you're the hero of your own story. I've even been talking, in promotion, I'm saying things like, don't forget your cape, or don't forget to bring your cape to the show. And let's talk about that for a second, because obviously we've got choices to make in life.
Right.
But people of faith they might have a hard time with this idea, because they'll say, oh, Jesus is the hero, or God's the hero of my story. To which I'm not saying I disagree with that.
Right.
But when it comes to like day-to-day choices, how does that land with you when you hear me say something like, you're the hero of your own story?
Yeah. It's important because Jesus is, we are completely saved by the work that he has done on our behalf. It's not what we do. We know that. But I totally get it when you say it, because Jesus doesn't make my choices. I'm not a robot. And we have human agency. That's part of how God even created us. And God has also laid out paths that lead to life and flourishing and love and benefit for others. But there are also paths we can choose that lead to shame and pain and deceit and division. And in fact, the Bible even talks through the whole book of Proverbs, this aspect of wisdom that we can use and make good choices. And we can also make horrible choices. And I know that God aims for us and desires for us and leads us in ways that are right and true and good. And yet we have human agency. And so, in fact, one term that it comes to my mind, another pastor used it, but I am captain of my own ship. Mm-hmm. I am responsible for my responses. Now, I captain it under the lordship of Jesus,
sure.
According to his ways as best as I can, with his strength, but I'm responsible. Yeah. I'm captain of the ship. So it's a cape, or I don't know what a captain wears, but a monocle. That's something where I try to even emphasize to people, make wise choices. You can bring life into your family. You can also bring pain and shame into your life and to others. Sure. So be wise.
There we go. Yeah, and the idea there is choosing the better story, is choosing to embrace taking ownership of that role of hero, the hero within, so that you can go after the things that you really want in life. Because ultimately, your choices are going to result in the life that you have. And yeah, it can be a life that's flourishing and doing great. It can be a life full of disappointment and regret and spinning your wheels, etc. And that's kind of what this is all about. So yeah, thanks for shedding some light.
I love that too. And the circumstances in your life, you don't get to choose. There's a lot of things that it's just your lot. You didn't choose the campfire, but that was your portion, your family's portion, and others as well. And now it's a matter of what's going to be our response. Will this make us bitter, or can we become even better? Through when life goes sideways. Sure. And I truly believe you can, but it's hard work.
Yeah, absolutely. Every story, the main character, the hero of the story, we all go through things that kind of trip us up, cause us to spin our wheels, get frustrated. We all want things, but sometimes when we don't have those right away, we encounter problems, challenges along the way. How have you seen that play out in your life, encountering problems? Have you had a guide step in or a mentor step in, coach you through that, kind of help you get realigned to what's important to you? What's that look like for in your life?
Yeah. Actually, even as you were saying it, there's a reason why when we sat here, you asked me what side I wanted to sit on. And I said, well, I always sit on this side because the right side of my face, when I was 18 years old, nothing of my own doing, but I experienced paralysis and didn't get all the movement back. So that was not a bad choice I had made, but it was a factor I had to now live with. And I was getting very bitter. I was getting very angry at God of why would my face be paralyzed and couldn't use it. But then I began to think deeper and say, well, who I am. I'm more than a face. I had to come to these conclusions and I guess in a sense of choosing a better story rather than being a victim or just hiding away, realizing that, well, who I am is more than just how I look on the outside. And then I thought about if I'm ever going to find love, who's going to want to date a guy or marry a guy that has half a face. And I thought, well, I guess I'm going to have to work on things like character and personality and generosity and humility, things that are actually really attractive.
Imagine that.
Because I imagine that because my moneymaker, my face isn't going to do it. And it really did actually get me to think more about who a human being is and who a teenager is as I was going into youth ministry. They're more than what's going on the outside. A lot of crazy stuff going on as they're experimenting with different styles and phases. But yet to see who they're on the inside. And I guess that was probably without me using that phrase, I realized that I was going to, even this hardship, this weird, odd thing happening in my life could actually shape me into a better man, a better pastor, and maybe even to see people not just for their outside appearance.
Sure.
But that was huge.
Do you have any people that played a specific role in your life that kind of helped you? Yeah, you had that challenge. Yeah. But help you get realigned to who Travis really is. Yeah.
And thankfully I did have a youth pastor. I'm one of those guys that didn't start to go into youth group till I was 16. And I came in through a youth group, a church that had hired a youth pastor, and he was just great. And I ate youth group up from 16, 17, 18 years old, had never been to a summer camp. This guy, Brian, was helpful for me in that time because I'm asking those questions. Why did this happen to me? I pray for God to heal me. I know he hears me. I know God's powerful. And yet, for reasons I don't understand, this affliction, very minor when you compare it to other things, but for an 18-year-old starting college, it was tough.
Oh yeah, self-image, all those things are in play there.
It was just, I had a habit. I would lift my hand was over my face most of the time. Anytime I started to laugh, I would cover, and eventually I just had to let it go. But Brian was huge, my youth pastor, just in comforting, praying with me, and kind of giving that encouragement of life is bigger than this, Trav. And there are real issues that people have to carry. And when you think about this, it's probably going to be in the cosmetic issue.
Sure.
Everybody's going to have something going on cosmetically.
Yeah.
But I've never been on a cover of a model magazine. And so I lament that. But other than that, it's all right.
Well, maybe this is the better story.
Maybe right? It is the better story. Maybe I can affect someone's life by not being extremely, really, really, really good looking.
There we go. Travis, what breaks your heart and why does it break your heart?
Yeah. Well, probably even within this theme and how I sensed even God leading me into youth ministry was one of the biggest fears, and what would break my heart was thinking about living a life that was just mediocre. I mean, mediocrity really, I wanted to live a life that had purpose and that was meaningful. And at first, I remember thinking, well, then that's got to be making a lot of money. I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player because I wanted to be admired. So I thought it was admiration, accolades, that's meaning. But then I started getting a little older and going, you know what? I don't think meaning is about securing good things for myself, because I saw what my youth pastor did in my life, forever changed by his investment. Yeah. And I began to think, what if I used my energies, my education, my gifts that have been given to actually be for the welfare of someone else. Yeah. That might bring God glory. And that shifted. So I guess one of those biggest fears is seriously wasting what God has given you, or living a life that just is not benefiting others. Man, that makes me sad. Yeah. I think for my kids, I think about others are going, man, you get to contribute to bringing glory to God and to the welfare of his people. So
Yeah, I read a statistic this last week as I was doing some studying that said it was like 70 something. I want to say like 77% of people feel like they're drifting and are emotionally disengaged in life.
yeah.
Just spinning their wheels, and you're speaking into that a little bit. Like it breaks your heart that people are spinning their wheels, living in mediocrity, settling or living small. It really is heartbreaking.
It is. And what gets paralyzing is that sometimes I think we always think it's got to be the Mount Everest of, okay, I've got to invent something new. I've got to come up with a cure for cancer. I think that paralyzes me of what am I going to do that's going to change the whole world? But when I brought it down to, I remember what I said to God, like, God, if I could change one teenager's life in the way that Brian, that youth pastor, changed my life, I'm like, I would consider that a success. And that got me lit up for, well, what does it look like to be a youth pastor?
Exactly.
And so it was very actually accessible. I mean, rather than making it something so, beyond, it's got to be the top of everything, like, well, yeah, what about if it's changing one life? And so that's what I set out to do 30 years ago, and it's continued since. I think it's been more than one life that I've been able to affect in a positive way, through ministry.
Love it. One of the things that I've heard is that we do the most growing in our life when we fail. Failure teaches, right? As long as we're willing to learn from it.
Yeah, if we will be students of it,
What would you say is like does something come to mind, a failure in your life? You're like, oh man, that taught me lessons.
Yeah. Probably a big one, even as more of in my adult life, which I wish I could, we always point to when we were younger and more foolish, but there was a season in my life where I was just walking through a lot of discontentment, and I wanted God to shift and change the assignment, the ministry assignment He'd given me. And I set my eyes on this ministry opportunity in another city, and basically for about 7 years, I just kept pushing for that. My wife, and then it became available. But my wife just did not feel at peace with it. She was not looking to move from the city we were at. My kids were thriving. She was thriving. I was not. And, long story short, through going around, I eventually pushed my way. She actually deferred, I think, to save our marriage because we were going at it. And I was resenting her as if she was the one that was keeping me from what God's call was, and she just didn't hear from God. I did. And I went against all wisdom. Even mentors and others were saying, you and your wife aren't on the same page with this. That's a red flag. And I kept going, no, like, this is definitely what, and so I want this. Yeah, I want this, and she'll come on board. And so I did. I moved us to that area. And after about 6 months, I remember saying to God, like, they were tanking, my kids were tanking, my wife was tanking, and it wasn't all it was cracked up to be. And I remember saying to God, you gave me what I asked for by allowing me to go to this place. But can I ask for something else? Can I ask for something that's a win for my whole family? And God's been gracious. My wife, she's a trooper. But ever since then, when I talk to married couples and how important it is that you are listening to your spouse, and if there's a big decision to make and you are not on the same page, really listen to that. Don't push forward on something.
Sure.
So, and it's embarrassing. I mean, because I knew the marriage books. I counseled couples, and here I was totally going against wisdom.
Yeah.
But God preserved and watched over us.
Yeah. So, wow, that's a big lesson learned.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Our wives are so valuable when it comes to big decisions like that, even small ones. But I mean, I'll say all the time, like, my wife is my barometer, right? And I got to pay attention to what she's saying, what she's sensing, what she's feeling. Yeah, that's super practical.
Some of my best ideas and things have not been my ideas. Annette, my wife, will prompt it. And then I look like a genius because she just really, she has so much insight in there. And I really needed to listen. So I think our marriage actually worked and has been stronger since then about how important it is that I'm listening and that we're working together on something, making a big decision in unity rather than, fractured.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. What would you say are two things that you wish everyone knew about pastors?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, they've got to know they are first and foremost, they're followers of Jesus, just like everybody else. It's really, it can mess with a person's mind when we put on a microphone, we maybe take a couple steps above everybody else and teach. And then sometimes there's that distance. People have to know that we are wrestling in faith. We are wrestling with our own purpose. We are also not perfect. So we are people who continue to repent and ask God's forgiveness and correction when we step out of line. I just think, and I also, maybe that's one thing, but the next thing is there is a tremendous burden upon us to truly care for people well, to teach them in ways that are right and true. As we're still learners of God's word, it's not that I'm teaching because I've got all of God's word like nailed and like figured out. I'm a lifelong learner of God's word. But just the weight that is upon us because we are, I think, doubly accountable. If we are teaching others God's word, we stand before the Lord of not misleading people.
Sure.
And so hopefully maybe the humanity of your pastor, your leader, your minister, to understand it. And that's why I love when people pray for us. We really need it. Everybody needs prayer, but it just, those are something, maybe the humanity aspect that our own failures. And I'll tell you, after I preach on Sundays, I ride my bike home, and I am my worst critic.
Yeah.
And dude, I get into some dark places after Sunday, after I've been vulnerable for 4 services. Dude, I start getting in my head of how, oh, you missed it. And that person there, disagrees with you. And I just, I have to be careful because I start listening to lies,
Sure.
But,
yeah. And then, even after a very successful, you said 4 services?
4 services on Sundays.
Yeah, it's not interesting. You have a successful 4 services. People are leaving encouraged. They're leaving more equipped. They've been fed. And then you're on your way home and you're feeling defeated.
Yeah.
You're thinking of the things that maybe were imperfect, and your mind, isn't that weird how our minds automatically go there?
I feel like I'll say things like, I missed it today. Like I missed it. And it's hard because you don't want to be dependent on like, I've got to hear feedback from other people. But someone asked me this last week. She came up to say, thank you for a message I had preached because it opened her eyes to something true in scriptures. And she goes, is it okay if I thank you for your message, because some pastors be like, don't thank me, thank God. My Sam Boone, don't thank me, thank Jesus. He'd always say that stupid. Whenever we say like, hey, thanks for this, opening that door, don't thank me, thank Jesus. He was being silly. But I told her, no, I said, it's not that I'm dependent upon that, but it sure is good when you're a communicator to hear like, did it land? Or did God teach you something through the message that we were going through? So it is helpful when that kind of sets me straight of maybe that's truth and not what I've been wrapping in my mind about.
Sure.
But,
yeah, that's very good. Well, Travis, I'm going to just like turn this over to you. We got people listening to the show. Obviously want to provide some sort of value, something that has to do with, vision, mindset, performance, purpose, or faith, family, finances, fitness, and fun, somewhere in there.
Dude. F. A lot of F's in there.
A lot of F's, yeah.
You are a pastor. That's alliteration right there.
Yeah, so what would you say that it's going to bring value
Yeah.
to our listeners in a practical way?
As you were just talking, something came to mind. I'll try to keep it brief. But something in my life that may seem very small, but it's actually become a very core part of my life was in the sense of choosing a better story. And I made a decision because I was sitting down a lot in my work. When we were college athletes and you had practice and we were playing, games all the time, health was just almost a byproduct of what we were doing. But when you get older, I'm sitting, I'm studying a lot, I'm not as active, and realizing that I need to work on my body too, like to keep health, because I want to do this for a while. Yeah. But I hated going to the gym. I'm like, I'm not that guy. I made a decision, and it was sort of an adventure decision. It was one of those like bike to work weeks, like sometimes you might hear, maybe you've never heard of it, but my buddy heard that one time. Hey, it's bike to work week. We're supposed to choose one day to ride our bikes to work. And it was kind of cool. We said, okay, let's do it on Wednesday. And we were 7 miles away from our church, so we kind of had to bring our lunch with us. But it made that day, like there's a little bit of adventure. And then I knew all day I'm riding my bike home. I'm not driving my car. Mm-hmm. And yet it was adventurous. And after doing it, and after a while later, when I was studying in seminary, I started deciding that I need to put some exercise in my commute. If I could ride my bike to places as opposed to driving my car, there's a little bit of health aspect, gets my heart going.
Sure.
But I found as my body was moving, I can never really sit and pray. I get too distracted. But if I walk, my body's doing something kind of rhythmic, and I feel like my mind is available to talk to God and to think through problems and issues. So I made, long story short, I began, I guess I'm a commuter. I'm not really a cyclist. I don't wear spandex. I still wear my jeans and my Converse.
Anyway.
No, not to the office, not to preach in. But it's become.
Everyone thanks you for that.
They do. I told my church, if you see me wearing spandex, you can slap me. But here's the deal, though. It's become a part of my life. It's a little bit of an adventure, and every day choosing the better story is if I can ride to work or ride to the grocery store, come back, it's some health, but I smell the smells. I tend to say hello to people more and have interactions when I'm not in the cage of a car.
Sure.
And it just set a different pace, but I'll tell you, on that bike, dude, I'm working through good stuff and working through false lies I've been believing. I think through people I need to follow up with or ask forgiveness. I get great ideas. I at peace, I pray, I talk to God. And so that has been choosing a better story. And my wife can even tell on certain days where I haven't been able to ride to work, because it's a 30 minute.
Yeah.
A time. And so there's something healthy though. I process before services. I ride my bike to church, and then I ride my bike home and I process through those bad thoughts, but kind of work it out. So when I get home, I feel like I'm invigorated, and hopefully I've worked through some junk. And I guess I'm not telling people then you've got to be cyclists, but it introduced a little bit of adventure. And you know what? It's a little bit punk rock to like ride your bike when everybody else is driving. I'm not saying you can do that, but what is in your life a bit of adventure that you can introduce that might have health benefits, might have mental benefits, spiritual benefits? That's been huge. And honestly, like I've been growing more and more where biking has been a bit more like going on solo bike packing overnight trips, and love it. So
nice.
I don't know if that's where we were thinking going,
it's just become part of your life.
It has been. And I honestly, it's giving a little flavor to my life. And now it gives me a little diversion. I've been thinking about doing longer bike packing trips on vacation where I'll go alone and I get to see beautiful places, and I take my tent with me and a stove, and it gives me a little diversion from ministry, which is all encompassing. But, again, I don't know what that might be for your listeners, but sometimes that's hikes or walking places rather than driving when you don't have to drive. Inviting someone along, whatever might be a little bit of dose of adventure in your 9 to 5 that just is a little bit adventurous. I'd highly encourage that, because that can grow. Start small. Something is better than nothing. And that started where now I'm riding, quite a bit. More than half the time, I'm probably on my bike getting places rather than in my car.
Yeah. And I know at certain times of the year in Redding, that's quite a commitment, because I think it gets 112 degrees.
It does.
There's disintegrate on your way home sometimes.
It does. It's really hot. There's a little. My wife has some boundaries on, like when it's too hot to ride. But here's what I want to say: is that sometimes it's also raining and drizzling. So it's easy to say, well, I'm not going to ride today. But my friend who lives in Portland said, Trav, we have a saying in Portland, because it rains quite a bit there, and he likes to run. He said, there's no such thing as bad weather. There's just bad gear. And so if we're only waiting for the perfect weather, that's going to be minimal. But I realize even if it's drizzling, I've got a rain shell. I've been collecting, I've got good gear. Of course, make wise decisions. Some days it's, not great. But even weather-wise, saying, well, what if I pack, I wear a shirt to sweat in, but I pack a nice shirt for my office, So it's been kind of planning ahead.
Sure.
Doing that. But honestly, it's brought some adventure in what sometimes can be a mundane, everything's the same. I'm sitting, and I look forward to riding my bike to work and home each time too.
That fits perfectly, because I would say when you are choosing adventure, you are choosing the better story. That's always the case. So for the people that are listening that don't have a bike, they're not cycling, would it be fair to suggest maybe a good first step is just go ahead and buy the pair of spandex first, and then get the bike later?
Oh yeah. No, you buy the spandex, wear it to the office, and just get comfortable in it. No, it's good though. I just think of like what might be adventurous or in your week. It's that hike that's in your backyard, or that place. Have you ever visited some of the places that people come to your city maybe to go on this hike or see this waterfall? And a lot of people are like, that's in my backyard, but I've never really seen it. What about and inviting someone to go with? because it's always, you can sit across coffee, but sometimes what if we just walked and back out there? Those are probably some better stories that are going to be relational, that might get you outside, might get you appreciating God's creation, because we are so, we're on our computers. I'm on my computer a lot. I'm reading a lot. We're inside. I do think there's something good about what will get you outside, and appreciating something that you didn't make.
Love it. Yeah. Well, Travis, I know you're a busy guy, and I want to say thank you for making time to like drop in just to be a part of the start of this. Again, thank you for being the one that like told me that phrase, because it's made a tremendous impact on my life, in the ministry that I oversaw, and our family, to be honest. So thank you for that. Thank you for the years and years that you've sacrificed for the benefit of other people. A lot of people don't understand all that goes into being a pastor, all that's a struggle personally, right? The sacrifices that are made. And I've followed you from a distance through social media. I'm glad that we've been able to like do some things together in ministry, which has been awesome. But, I've always looked up to you. I can't think of a better guest to have on the show. And I think what I appreciate most about you, and I've always felt this way, is your love for people just oozes out of you. And so thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for like living within the context of how God wired you to be. And I just wish you nothing but a fruitful future. And you're now, I know you got demoted. You're not in youth ministry anymore.
Yeah.
But being the leader of a church, a lead pastor isn't for wimps. And I wish you nothing but the best. So thank you for the sacrifices you're making on an everyday basis so that you can be a part of choosing the better story, but also helping other people choose the better story in their life as well.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Ryan. It's been a blessing. It's good.
So as we close up today, just wanted to remind you all that you are the hero of your story. So don't forget to wear your cape today. There's lots of opportunity out there, so go make it happen. Until next time, go choose the better story.
A better life, better vision, what you wanting? Let's make it happen. Time to choose the better story. Come on. Choose the better story.